Yeah. Right. Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the South Oxfordshire District Council and Vale of Whitehorse District Council joint audit and governance meeting. My name is Mike Piggles. This is my first time chairing this meeting, so forgive me if I get anyone's name wrong and be kind. This meeting has been held at office in Abbey House, Abingdon. Voting members are here in person as required, but officers and public speakers are able to join remotely via Microsoft Teams. The meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded later for public viewing, excluding the confidential items. There's a few housekeeping announcements. In the event you need to evacuate the building, please evacuate by the nearest exit and through there, I believe, and to the right of the meeting room, and stand at assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. On arriving at this meeting, you should have signed the fire register. Please inform the Democratic Services Officer if you have not done this. For those who are joining remotely, when you're not speaking, please ensure your microphone is muted and your camera is off. Please can everyone ensure that their mobile telephones and your devices are silent during the meeting. As a modern council, both officers and members will use their electronic devices throughout the meeting. If councillors wish to speak or participate in the debate, please raise your hand and I'll call anyone in turn. So first, we'll move on to item 2, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from councillors with votes.
Thank you. And we now come to the minutes of the previous meeting on the 7th of April 2025, and we need to agree that it's the correct record. Can I have a proposer for that, please?
I'm happy to propose, Jay.
Can I have a seconder? So those in favour of accepting the minutes of the inaccurate record, please. I can't vote. And not now because the rest of the meeting. So it's
Just an abstentions.
Are there any declarations of interest of the items we're discussing? And also, can officers now inform are there any urgent matters to discuss?
Might be worth just welcoming new members.
Who are new?
Yes.
So
I'm new.
oh, you're new, sorry.
There's quite a few new committee members who are new. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I
new to this committee.
I wouldn't know who was new or not.
Oh, I see.
So just you, Andrew, is it? So, well, oh, Paul, right.
Welcome.
Welcome, both of you. I'm sure you will enjoy this meeting, and hopefully in its brevity, given the weather. Right, next item 6 is public participation. Have we received any questions or statements from members of the public that are registered to speak? So therefore we move quickly on into the first item 7, in terms of the reports, which is our internal audit report, annual report of 2024 to 2025. And I believe that is over to Victoria Dorman-Smith, who is our internal auditor risk manager. Would like to introduce your paper.
Thank you. Yes, this is the annual report for 24-25, which, per the public sector internal audit standards, provides an overall opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of South and Wales framework of governance, risk management and control. Overall, for 24-25, there is a satisfactory system of governance, risk and internal control at South and Wales. In forming this opinion, a number of factors have been considered, and these are all outlined in section 8 of the report. Also included in the report is a summary of the audit coverage in the year across operational audits and key financial reviews. A look at the performance targets and how we performed against those, some feedback and the other work that we've undertaken. Happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, just noticing 18 feedback. Only wanted feedback forms returned, I understand. So you're going to use one-to-one interviews next time?
So last year we actually had quite a few more feedback returns. So it's a bit of a dip this year, which is been unfortunate. So I think what we're going to do is try and do an online form, which is easy at the moment, which is a Word document which you email out. So I think we're going to look at the option of anonymising it as well. And try and get better uptake. But generally it's quite low, to be honest.
Is it possible to anonymise it, but to make sure that they're prompted, anonymise it and have it as a target? Is that possible?
Yeah, we're looking at problems to see what options we've got, without having to pay for that option. So yeah, we're looking at that at the minute and seeing if we can improve on the manual form. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Peter?
Yes, I'm not sure if this is your course report or the full year report, but on page 25, we were referring to the amount of overdue after tax.
Yeah, that's the next item.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Fine.
I did have a number of questions. I did have one question, which was about, I mean, it's obviously summation of a year's activity. I was wondering what lessons have been learned, because I know you've changed the risk management system around a little bit. What lessons have been learned, which are being carried over into the new risk year?
In terms of risk specifically. So in terms of how we approach risk, it remains pretty consistent. We've got all the different risk categories, so fraud risk, legal risk, that kind of thing. So we assess that on an individual audit basis as well. I think you missed the latest audit of the risk management was done in 23-24. So we recently audited that as well and made some recommendations, which Yvonne is working on, and how we look at risk management across the organisation. But in terms of how we look at it from an audit perspective, it remains pretty consistent. We do a risk assessment at the start of the audit, and we focus our work on any higher risk items or anything that's of a particular concern to head of service or service manager in that area.
Councillor Skinner?
I had a couple of things. Page 23.
It's the next.
In
That's
the-
the next item.
Is it?
Yes. We're on agenda item 7.
Which is the
Save your question for the next item.
Am I using the right page numbers? I'm using the ones on the bottom. Okay, all right, fine. Thank you.
okay.
I'm struggling to read them.
Okay.
That's my problem.
Are there any other questions on the getting the title right? The internal audit annual report 2024 to 2025. Right. Is there any discussion on the paper? So thank you for all your kind of questions and comments. We now, yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah,
I propose that we note this report.
second. Okay, then we move on to the next report, which is. Oh, you.
Yeah.
Everyone votes, so should we go forward? That's
Yeah.
So everyone in favour of
Noted.
accepting, noting the recommendation?
Yep.
Andrea?
To be honest with you, I can hardly hear what anybody's saying. I don't know what's the background.
Just raise your hand.
That's my left.
It's to note the report.
Yes.
Next report.
Oh, yes. No.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Speak up. Right. There's no abstentions and nobody against the report. Next we move on to the internal audit update report for Q1 of 2025.
Thank you. So this report summarises the work that we've completed in Q1 of this year. We've completed 4 audits, 2 key financial and 2 operational. Also, the report summarises and gives a bit of an update on the open audit actions. So we've currently got 203 open across 4 different years. And in the quarter, we raised 41 new actions and closed 49. And we've got 22 that are past due and high priority, so priority 1. Of the 4 completed audits, we've got one which received limited assurance, and that's building control. And on the call remotely, we've got John Trujillo, who was the auditor who did that review, and he's going to just give an introduction into that audit and give a bit of a summary. So whenever you're ready, John, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Sorry, thought best to... Perfect, thank you. This is Building Control's first audit following significant reforms under the Building Safety Act 2022, including the introduction of the Building Safety Regulator to regulate and raise building safety standards. From April 24, local authorities must comply with operational standard rules and monitoring arrangements to ensure compliance with these regulations. Internal Audit completed its review of building control in May 25 and reports a limited assurance rating. The team positively engaged with the review and 14 management actions were agreed, including 2 priority 1, 7 priority 2 and 5 priority 3. Detailed findings and management responses can be found in Appendix 2 from page 19 of your agenda pack. And I believe the Head of Planning, Adrian, and Building Control Team Leader, Dan, are present and may want to provide an update on the actions relating to the review. Alternatively, I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the report itself. Thank you.
Anyone? Victoria?
Unless there's any question, they have to take any questions on the report.
So do you want to take any questions to do with the building control part whilst John is on the screen? And we can questions. We have a few questions. Thank you, John. Then Peter and Andrew. To Peter first, you had a question on that on page 25 you mentioned.
Yeah, page 25. Yes, it's the dreaded subject of the overdue the debts of council tax arrears. My question, obviously, concerned about that, but also wondering whether we collect council tax on behalf of other building authorities, such as the county council and the police authorities, as well as do we pass over the those ones which we haven't actually collected, or do we only pass over? Do we pass over the theoretical totals?
So, first of all, I think when we talk about debt on council tax, it needs to be considered in the fact that that's debt on the entire council tax due, which is well over 100 million in each council every year.
Yes.
For the county and police, so it's probably getting on for more. We'll get heading more towards 150 million actually. I can't remember the exact number at the moment. The collection fund works in a particular way. So there's 2 aspects. Firstly, when we set the tax base, we make an allowance for bad debt provision. The amount of money we won't collect, we've been setting that. We've been setting a collection rate of 98.5% in the end. And what I would say is that in year we tend to collect around about 98%. Right. And then there's a raft of money that comes in after the end of the year in respect of that year. So we comfortably get more than 98.5. This is our historic. Those who've been around a long time remember you set it at 98. We took a decision a couple of years ago to set it at 98.5 so that we were consistently achieving that. So in that, although when you look at the actual debt, the value of the debt, it's a big number. When you consider it, we collect sort of getting on for 99% of all of it. It's a pretty good return, and it puts us in the upper quartile of authorities for collection rates. The other thing to say is that there's then a calculation done on surplus and deficit on the collection fund, in which calculations around bad debt provision are taken into account. Now, just to give you some indication of historic performance, when COVID happened, we actually increased those provisions because we wondered whether everyone would keep up with their payments. We were actually we over provided for them. It turned out, we didn't know at the time obviously, but it turned out that actually our collection rates held up pretty well even during COVID. So that's the 2 ways it manifests: the surplus deficit figure and then we set the tax rates.
So we passed over, say, the county council only 98% of what we're billing. We don't.
Now, what would happen is that we will set our assumption when the county council set their budget.
Yes.
They set it against a tax base that's built on the assumption that we'll collect 98% of all money due.
Yes.
The surplus reflects the money over and above the 98 we get.
Right. So we don't lose out at the 10. That's the main thing.
Councillor Skinner, you had a question as well.
Yes, it's really philosophical in a way. I don't have a good handle on how closely this process is followed by officers in general and departments in particular. So when it says here, audit recommended 2 management actions, the key thing about this is that management should accept the actions and get on with them. I'd quite like to see that more in the language, if you like, rather than assume. I'd like to see it a bit more upfront in the language. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously in this report packet, you did get a summary version, you get the executive summary. In the detailed findings, on each finding, it's got whether management have agreed the action or not agreed, and their comments as to whether they'd like to add any context or what they intend to do. So that's where we provide the detail on the discussions we've had with the action owners and management.
Okay, and do they often not agree?
There are some times when they don't agree. Yeah, so
And-
people have a
and-
discussion about, well, is it worth pursuing this action? Is it worth having an alternative action? We always capture the risk and the issue, but we might come to a slightly different action. We might have suggested something that's just not practical, or something that's going to take too long, or actually is not in ever the interest of the organisation or the service. So we do have those discussions, but they are quite infrequent. Normally because we've got a good understanding from the field work of what the issues are, and we've already had those discussions about, well, what we're going to do about it. So by the time we've suggested the action, most of the time it's appropriate with a few wording tweaks on a page, and that's more the adjustments we have. It's around the wording of it, but actions are generally well received.
I mean, I think from my point of view, that's fine as background, and I wouldn't really expect, I mean, I certainly wouldn't expect to look at that level of detail. What I'm interested in is the ones that are agreed and whether they're done or not. So in terms of what we see, we should assume that they have all been agreed with management, and is that?
Yeah, so when the executive.
Sorry, I don't mean we should assume. What I mean is, if they're here, they have all been agreed with management.
Exactly. And if they're not agreed, then we would say that in the executive summaries. Anything that's on the table at the very front page, those are agreed actions.
Okay. I mean, what happens if it's not agreed? Presumably it goes to the chief executive.
Well, just in avoidance of doubt, I think what you said was that if no agreement could be reached, then you'd ensure that an appropriate risk to balance off that.
So our role is to highlight to the committee what the issue is and what the potential risks are. So if in a very rare scenario it's not agreed at all, we can't come to any kind of action or appropriate remediation, our role is still to highlight to members what the issue is, what the context behind that is, and what the risks might be associated to that issue. And then I haven't been in this scenario here, but then I would imagine that as a committee, you would decide what you feel would be the best course of action, whether you would want to speak to the officers involved to get more understanding or take an alternative route. But our role in the report would be to, at a minimum, highlight what we found.
Okay. I mean, I think I'd also make a distinction. As someone who's actually not agreed audit recommendations in a past life, it can very often, I think it depends on the risk associated with that recommendation. I think if you've had a limited audit with priority wrong recommendations that the management didn't accept, I think that's very definitely something we would be bringing to this committee for discussion. I think if you had a more or less a substantially substantial audit or very good audit with a low priority recommendation where it wasn't necessarily agreed, would we necessarily bring that to the committee for your deliberation? I'm not sure we would. I think we would form a view
To
based
be
on what's in
honest,
front of
those
us.
scenarios are normally resolved in the
Yeah,
exit
they
meeting
are.
discussion anyway. And they're normally arising because we put something in the wording that's interpreted maybe differently, and that's not our intention. So normally the wording can be updated so that both parties are sort of happy and content with the report.
I see the council's monitoring officers appeared on screen and met with you.
If I didn't know if I could help on this one, Chair, because I occasionally will become involved in scenarios that you and your members are just describing. And to be clear, I absolutely agree with what the auditor was saying, that in most instances it's about discussion and clarification rather than active disputes. If there was a dispute, then under the normal rules are that I would become involved, and then I would decide whether to bring a report to yourselves, which I almost always would if there was a meaningful dispute. I'd be amazed if it wasn't. And as has been said by the Section 151 officer, what is being audited and the point of difference is going to be very key there. If it's something very minor, and I can think of ones in the past I've been involved with that related to stationery, then I didn't put it through to members. But when it's anything that's more important than that, then it would be coming through to yourselves. It's rare as you like. I can think of 3 examples in 30 years. So it's right to check it, it's right to consider it, but it's very unlikely, I would hope, that these things would happen. But if they did, there is a statutory process for local government, which includes the 151 officer and myself, as well as yourself as chair in that instance. I just hope that was helpful. I didn't want to interrupt, but I have experience of managing those issues in the past.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Andrew, are you happy with that response?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, it leads me to another point we have here, where shortly afterwards in the report it says you'll continue to report open actions to this committee. And I mean, it may be my misunderstanding of our role entirely, but I would have thought the place to report open actions was to the management chain. I mean, we're not an executive body as far as I know. We don't give instructions to people. Do
What can be? Well, I think your role is to be informed as to how, you've got the governance role. Issues have been brought to your attention through the audit process, and we're, I suppose, taking this opportunity to explain to you how the organisation is progressing in implementing those. I think what we've talked about before, and unfortunately being off sick, I think probably something that's fallen up and have to come back to, is where do me and Victoria take this table, not just to this committee but elsewhere. And it was something we were working on. Unfortunately, being off sick and sort of gone off the radar, but it is certainly something on the back of my mind that we need. As you say, this report needs to come in front of management team for discussion, as well as being brought to you for your awareness, based on the fact that we report these audits to you before. Recommendations have been made, and we're reporting to you on how far those have been implemented.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're referring to the same discussion. I look at all this stuff and I don't really know what's important or not. It's really hard for me to tell.
But for me, it's the priority ones not implemented past due. So it's very much the 22 in the table at the top of page 15. It's those 22, of which, to be fair, 13 could well have only been, they might just be a matter of weeks past due, but the 7 in 22, 23, that's 3 years ago. That's the
14 of them are this year.
Yeah.
And 24, 25.
Yeah. So basically, it's that 22. I would contextualise that's 22 out of hundreds of recommendations every year that are outstanding. So it's probably just worth contextualising that is a very small percentage of a large number, but it's still something we should be monitoring.
So I mean, we're not solving the problem of this here. Can I suggest that in terms of reporting this in future, we give the kind of context of what Andrew was talking about what's important. Maybe we think about how we how the actual if not the report, the actual kind of supporting dialogue actually highlights areas where we think something really important is about to kind of get into trouble, if you like. But also, I think Andrew did raise a very good point about ensuring that the senior management team, and I'm sure they are aware of it, but how do we actually know they are aware of it? And actually think about how that actually then you can show in the report, so that kind of stops that particular answer, that particular thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I do. I agree. I think formalising that would be helpful, and then I can summarise that process essentially in this report, so you know what's happening going forward.
So I think we kind of, are there any more questions from?
Just a point of curiosity, I was looking at the exemptions and there's simply ceased to accept now obviously died and probate and drag on. But the oldest exemption being granted in 2012 for South, 2017 for both, that seems like it's a long time. Is that because of probate difficulties or other legal areas that you obviously can't go into specific detail of that person mistake, but it does seem I thought it was only a year.
Can I just check the page number?
So I'm looking at I haven't got a page number there, but I'm looking at the general audit report council tax required.
On section 3.
Yeah, section 3 exemptions. To the bottom of the audit.
Unless Simon knows the reason for that, I'd have to look into it. I'm afraid it's quite detailed.
It's just that we.
Yeah, not just detail, but just curious. It seemed like quite an anomaly.
Yeah, so I can have a look. But,
Sorry, can somebody respond to Andrew and just explain?
I think the critical thing on that one from this committee's perspective would be the fact that the annual reviews are taking place and that been undertaken. And I think if it had been 5 years since we looked at those exemptions, then obviously that would be a big issue for the authority. But we can get that clarification.
Okay. So I think you moved into discussion there a little bit. So I take it there are no more questions. Any more discussion on this particular report? If not, then we then need to agree. Well, we need to agree to note this report. So can I just ask the proposer? Second bit. That's Councillor Kingsley, and I think Councillor Khan. Half second. Vote all those in favour of noting the report. Everybody and so on. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
The next is item 9, which is the annual review of complaints 2024-2025. And I believe Councillor Rawlings is going to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Also covering for Neil Fawcett, who couldn't be here because of another meeting in respect to the Vale. We have a very low level of complaints, considering that in SODC we've got 150,000 people, something like that. Fractionally less in Vale, but all of those numbers need to be set in that context. The context for this whole area is that there is regulation and guidance by 2 key ombudsmen, the local government and social services one, and separately a housing one. But of course, not everybody complains. So the complaints that we do get may represent a wider set of issues. So complaints are really valuable to us because if something goes wrong, we need to learn and to fix it. As the report shows, for SODC, there were 99 stage 1 complaints in that year, up 35 from the number in the previous year, and 30 of that increase is explained by the change in the number of finance related ones. That's to say, council tax and housing benefit queries. And 14 of those 99 went on to stage 2, which is down 6 from last year. For Vale, it was 99 stage one, up 14 from last year. And again, most of that 16 were explained by finance. And 18 went on to stage two, which was an increase of 4 from last year. There's also facility for compliments on the system now about the handling that's been undertaken, and those are reported on. In terms of the local government and social care ombudsman, 6 complaints went forward to him. That's down 2 on last year, and 5 decisions were made and none upheld. For Vale, 13 went through to him, which is an increase of 10 on last year, and there were 8 decisions, 5 not upheld, 2 referred back to Vale for local resolution, and 1 was upheld. And for the housing ombudsman, there were no references for either council. Developments, there have been and there is ongoing new training for our customer service staff. As of today, a new workflow system via an add-on to the CRM system is going live, and that will develop as we go along. And policies have been updated, in particular in your Appendix 4, Appendix 5, concerning, in the first case, vexatious and unreasonable complainants, how we handle those situations, and in Appendix 5, clarifying compensation and remedies and making sure they're all in line with Ombudsman's guidance.
Thank you. I believe you've joined by a number of officers to support you, Lee. Did the officers have anything to add to the? Of course, I mean, we got Adrian Duffield and
Sally Watkins.
No.
No, nothing further to add. I think Lee's covered it very well. Thank you.
Great stuff. Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, I've just got a quick question, Lee, just for clarification. You said there's 99 complaints. What I just want to know is that 99 unique complaints, or is it 10 people complaining 10 times?
I honestly don't have the answer to that. I'd have to defer.
I can answer that one, Chairman. It's 99 unique complaints.
So if that person was to complain again, that would just be one complaint.
We would try and respond to both in the same response if possible. Otherwise, we would log it as a new complaint. But if it had the same subject matter, we probably wouldn't respond to it again. If a topic is responded to at stage 1, we wouldn't rehash that as another stage 1 generally.
So just to clarify, these are 99 unique complaints.
They are. To be honest, if someone has made a stage 1 complaint and they're still not happy, they would need to escalate to a stage 2.
Thank you.
I'm just intrigued to know how we compare with comparable sized district council. Is there any information on that?
I don't have that offhand. I don't know whether again Sally can give some context there.
We don't actually. We don't have any from other councils. We do. The Ombudsman does compare all councils in relation to the cases that are referred to the Ombudsman, and we compare very favourably in cases that go to the Ombudsman, particularly in the number of cases that are upheld, which for us is very, very low. But no, I'm afraid we don't. It's a very interesting point. I shall take that one away.
Mark, I believe you got your hand up. Or you
just to add to Sally's point, we have to put in context as well. We're not comparing apples and apples. For example, our services are not the same as every other district council. Some are insourced, some are outsourced. So there's always going to be that fluctuation in numbers. But Sally's absolutely right. What was included in the Appendix 4, which is the local government ombudsman complaints, there is a link on there, and they helpfully provide details and for all local councils across England and Wales, and you can see the number of complaints are very, very low in comparison to many other councils.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions?
Personally, I think receiving complaints is good because it lets us know what we're doing right and areas to improve. So based on, obviously I know you've just taken this role over, but do you think our complaints procedure and how to complain is can be simplified even more?
Well, I think I've tried to set out some of the developments in terms of the training, new workflow system, so that that workflow system is more efficient in and of itself, but it also has triggers to remind if a case hasn't been closed off or dealt with within a suitable timescale. So I think that's a step forward. And then, of course, the update to policies. It refines what we do. I
was more looking from a point of view from a resident. I want to complain. Can I just phone up? Can I email? You know, can it be any simpler? Mark.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean,
Mark wants to speak.
I mean, we have an online form, as you would expect, on both councils' websites. People can complete and fill in their complaint. But if somebody phones Sally's team in customer services, says, I want a complaint, we will take it over the phone. We will talk that back to them, saying we think your complaint issues are this, and then we'll process it through that. We try and make the complaints process as simple as possible. We could always do more, but we're conscious of different people's needs, different people's the way they present a complaint as well. As we found with the recent launch of the garden waste permit, we had people presenting as complaints, but actually there were service requests and we dealt with them before they were regularised as a formal complaint, if you see what I mean. So dealing with the issue, because if it's, for example, my bin's not been collected, it's not a complaint. You want your bin emptied. We sort that. It doesn't throw through to a formal complaint very often. So we try and make it as simple as possible for people.
Just on that particular point, because in this day and age, people like to complain or let the world know on social media. So if they were to tag the council, would we respond? Or would that count as a complaint?
If it was felt appropriate, the comms team would respond. They would either respond to the comment or they would message and ask someone to complete a complaints form or to get in touch with us directly. They wouldn't enter an argument on social media, but they would put facts straight if they felt that was appropriate to do so.
And in that stage, if I was to complain and I tag the council, someone will respond, then I'll have to fill in a form or go online.
We will refer you to fill in our form. We do like complainants to fill in the form or to have one of my team fill in the form for them so that we can double check that we've got all the issues down. We can double check whether that complainant needs any reasonable adjustments to help them to use the complaints process and a number of other things. So we would request you to use the online form or to give us a call and tell us what your complaint was.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
I don't
know who you
sorry,
are.
Mike. Apologies.
I can't see his.
Apologies for being late. It was
Can everyone just put their name tag just in an angle so we can see your name?
Because I'm new here, so
Yeah.
it's kind
So
of
just put it at an angle, then we can read your.
Hi, Mike.
Perfect.
The training, you were saying training roll out to customer services, but people who aren't in customer services who may be receiving complaints and not recognising them as complaints, are they receiving the training and aware of the process and so on as well?
So there are two levels of. Sorry, Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are two levels of training. There is that level of training which is for staff, and that is going to be on the new HR training system, and it will be mandatory for all staff to complete as part of their induction. And that will go through those issues about what is a complaint, what isn't a complaint, and the principles of good complaint handling, where to refer a complaint to, etc., so that all staff have a general awareness. And then there is a second round of training, which will most likely be face-to-face with some of my team, which is for everyone who responds to complaints across the council. So that is mostly service managers and heads of service, occasionally team leaders. So that's more focused on how to investigate a complaint and how to respond to a complaint.
So it's in the pipeline anyway then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
I did have a question about stage 2 complaints when obviously the person, you're stage 1 has been rejected, it's moved to stage 2. How well does that actually work in trying to get like an unbiased person to actually review the complaint to actually check that the process has been followed correctly?
I mean, unbiased is an interesting phrase. I mean, if somebody's complaining to the council and another officer responds at stage 2, they sometimes think actually you're going to reach the same conclusion. I have been doing some stage 2 complaints recently for housing, for example, and that gives me an independent view of that service. I don't manage that service. And equally, the housing head of service is looking at complaints that are coming about customer services at stage 2. So trying to get some distance from the services that we actually run to say, actually, is this right? Have we responded to the complaint properly? We can never satisfy people if people want to complain, but they do need to go through those 2 stages before they go to the local government ombudsman, because they will push it back to us anyway if they don't. But I have seen a number of stage 2s during the last year where we've upheld further things that weren't upheld at stage 1 because we've had a fresh look at it. We've actually reached a slightly different conclusion and scrutinised it further, perhaps, and offers some remedies for that. Hence the compensations policy you got before you today as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, if I can put it like that. But we do try and be objective when we do those complaint responses. Hence the training that Sally's referenced earlier.
Have we got a couple more questions? Not to direct. Oh, and
Yeah, I was just wondering, and following on from Mockie's point about social media, and do officers ever get contacted on their own social media? And it's all very well to say, once would be, please contact me via this, but obviously there's a need to protect officers when they're working and in their home time, their own space. Is there a policy on that, or is it something just
Yes.
occur?
Yeah, the comms team led by Andy Roberts, we have a protocol for staff. If you are contacted through your own social media, what you should and shouldn't do. In essence, don't engage with it because it's in your private life. If somebody has a real complaint about the council, there are routes to go through, and we would advise staff to do that, but not to engage in a debate about something that you're never going to win the argument.
Thank you.
Andrew.
But very quickly, two questions. I'll put them together and shut up. I was curious that it says we decided to expand the vexatious policy to include all. I'm just curious about who the we was. It's presumably not internal audit, because why would they? Second question about this here, terminate where it says reporting the matter to the police. Presumably there is a process for calling or reporting something to the police that involves a management change. I'm just wondering who makes that decision.
Take those 2 questions separately because they're quite different. So Sally or Mark?
Yeah, I'll take the one about the expansion of the vexatious complainants, but I'll let Sally come back on what we do should we need to call the police. The previous vexatious policy was very much dealing with complainants. It wasn't broad enough to deal with those people who come into, for example, Abbey House and cause a bit of grief for my staff. So we've expanded that policy very much to look at vexatious customers or residents who are complaining frequently and too often to the council, and we've dealt with their issues, but they keep coming back. So that's why we've broadened that policy. I don't know, Sally, if you want to say something about what we do when we call the police.
Yes, okay. So if we do get visitors to Abbey House who are regular visitors and they make a nuisance of themselves, I mean, we accept that some people have mental health issues and they really can't help the way that they behave when they visit Abbey House. But there comes a point, when any customer who's been to Abbey House and caused a fuss, caused staff to feel uncomfortable or customers to feel uncomfortable, we do need to say to them, please don't visit anymore, and we'll give them contact numbers or a contact name, so that they have somebody who can help them, but they don't come into Abbey House and threaten staff. And that is coming back to Mark's point. That's one of the reasons really why we widened that policy out. We were finding that we wanted to say to a couple of people who kept coming into Abbey House, kept shouting, swearing, and just disrupting everything. We wanted to say to them, please don't come in again, but we had no policy to cover that. So we would fall back on the vexatious complainants policy. So in effect, we've just regularised that so that we have a policy for everyone if they're in those circumstances. But mainly it was to deal with visitors to Abbey House who come in time and time again.
Sorry, I obviously didn't express myself well. Who is authorised to call the police?
Okay, yes, sorry, that was the second part. Okay, so if somebody is being threatening in Abbey House.
No, just presumably you don't expect any and every council officer to pick up the phone and call the police. I would expect that there is some sort of management process that you go through, and somebody says, yes, that's serious, we will call the police.
No, we actually have a police radio. We have a police radio. We're in direct contact with the police on reception. So if the people who are manning reception, which are members of mine and Mark's team, if they are feeling threatened, if they've asked someone to leave and they just won't leave, and they are causing disruption, they are all authorised to call the police via the police radio.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any more questions on the site? Thank you, Sally and Mark. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, then we need to move on. Again, we're voting to note recommendations in the report. There's quite a long list of recommendations in your report. Just go through them. The item A, which is the formal complaints received in 2024-25, and the council's performance in responding to complaints against time scale set out in our corporate complaints policy and procedure is shown in Appendix 1. Item B, the complaints received by the local government and social care related to the council in 24-25 are shown in Appendix 2. C, the council's self-assessment that as required by the housing ombudsman over practice as shown in Appendix 3. And D, the revised managing vexatious and unreasonable customer behaviour policy as set out in Appendix 4. Item E, which is the new remedies, the compensation policy as set out in Appendix 5. Can I just take a quick vote to just confirm we've noted those?
I'll second that proposal.
Yes.
I propose that we note the overall report and the 5 points that are highlighted on our agenda papers.
So, second it. Okay. Can we take a vote for? Thank you, Sally and Mark.
Thank you. Really
Councillor Rawlings. Thank you. And then we now need to move on to item 10, which is the annual report on the councillor's code of conduct complaints for 24-25. And I believe, Nick, that you're talking to this particular report. One thing I do want to just remind councillors is that the report contains an exempt appendix, which if members wish to discuss the contents, we will need to go into confidential session.
Thank you, Chair. Members, so it's been identified many times that operational failures always can be linked back to bad governance. So this report on the code of conduct is a critical element of how we make sure that the organisation has good and effective governance. Whilst you as members are all obviously very busy in making sure, well, you've shown that in your debate tonight, making sure that processes and procedures are well managed and correctly managed and recorded. This is a limb which in part, well, basically is there to make sure that you in turn are acting in an appropriate way within the defined code of conduct. I think it's worth reminding everyone that this committee and myself as monitoring officer in overseeing the conduct of members. We're part of an environment to support good governance across the authority to ensure that we are delivering the best services for your community, for our community outside. And you've already heard today about how that's audit, the finance team. I'd add to that managers generally, as well as the parish clerks, parish officers, all have a role in supporting good behaviour, and everything that's covered in the report is supported by all of those people in different ways who act to enable me to see what is happening under the code of conduct and to react to it and to work with them all in order to oversee behaviour and make sure that the code of conduct is followed. Section 2 makes out that it's meant to, and it does, underpin all of the council's work, because what it does is it can demonstrate to everybody that members are making decisions properly, that all the things in the code are followed, that you are acting in the public interest, not in your personal interest. If you have an interest to do with ownership of land or something like that, that you record it properly, as do your colleagues at parish councils around the country. So that's what the code of conduct is there for, at the biggest sense. And what this report tries to do is explain in a little more detail for you and for members of the public reading it or watching this, to understand what is being done to manage behaviour and what sanctions are set nationally and what we do about those members' interests. In the report, I won't go through the whole of the report. I'll try and draw out some key points that I think I'd be keen for members to be completely confident with. One of the points that's in there which is worth emphasising is that the sanctions which sit behind this are nationally set. They are not set to local level. They are established through the relevant legislation, Localism Act and elsewhere. That's quite challenging at the moment, I would have to say, for high impact bad behaviours. But the system is now set up in a way that enables quick and more efficient than it was in the past dealing with lower level behaviours. I'll put it that way. So rudeness can be dealt with very easily. Perhaps the worst extremes of bullying behaviour, the sanctions may be a struggle to apply here in a way that people would feel was a suitable sanction for certain behaviours. That said, this is also backed by investigation and the ability to use other powers, which I don't really refer to in this report. For example, Fraud Act powers, if there was a member was found to be or a parish councillor was found to be doing something wrong, and that would be applied as needs be. Section 9, you'll see that I talk there at some length about the administration of the whole process. It's very much my focus to make sure that the complaints process in respect to members is a pragmatic approach. Members in the past have said to previous monitoring officers here that they want to see pragmatism and they want to see alternative interventions and informal sanctions used where they are appropriate. And that is set out within our scheme and our arrangements, which is the local element of the code of conduct. And that's been followed by myself and by my colleagues who support me in carrying out investigations. There are, and I want to pay particular thanks to paragraph 11, the 6 independent persons who are there to support the application of the code of conduct and to act as an external independent voice, but with insight and experience of governance issues, to myself, to complainants and to subject counsellors. Quite often we'll have 3 different, well, not often, occasionally where it's necessary, we will have 3 different independent persons giving bespoke advice to each
person involved in a particular complaint. They also act as a check and challenge to myself in my decision making. It's worth remembering, I always think, that this the code of conduct gives a monitoring officer a range of duties, and it's really important that those extra voices are there to hear me through, explain my thinking in applying discretion, and to offer a different perspective, which I can promise you they definitely do, and that's very valued. And I'd like to thank all of them through yourself, Chair. The Register of Interest section is there. I would hope that you would all know the broad position. That's more there for the public who wanted to have or had an interest in this, so that they can see what is being done, where we keep the registers, and how we make sure that the private interests of individual councillors and individual parish councillors are clear and visible to the world. That's why paragraph 17 and 18, I'll go into some more detail about a new drive which has been taking place, unfortunately, due to the increasing number of threats and inappropriate behaviour towards councillors. So we are now applying a test on whether to keep the address of particular councillors confidential, occasionally taking advice from the police on some of those questions. But certainly there's been a significant increase in the number of members who are seeking to withhold their addresses, as I set out in the report. They would still, obviously, they would still be enforced against in exactly the same way. They can still be contacted through myself. They can still be challenged to myself. I have all the information on the register, but what is made public is only the name and the details of what interest they've got rather than their home address. Unfortunately, to avoid problems that have been seen around the country, and thank goodness not locally. But it's a big change from what you'll have seen in the past, what's happened in the last 12 months. Chair, I think at that point, I mean, the rest of the report, I hope, pretty much speaks to itself. There is an appendix which is there for you and which you will have read, but the public won't have seen. But that sets out that there are 15 complaints which resulted in formal investigation. You'll also see that many of them were not taken all the way through the process, because in many cases those pragmatic settlements were achievable. And I emphasise that only happens if both the complainant and the subject councillor are happy with an informal resolution that I would offer. They are there now. If you do wish to talk through any particular complaint, I'd suggest, Chair, that you consider going into part 2 so that we could speak with that confidentially, perhaps after any other questions which are more of a general nature. Would be my suggestion to you. I hope that's been a helpful guide through the report. And the only final point, sorry, I meant to make was that what this doesn't do is list how many informal complaints are received at this time, and that's never been done at this council. However, I've started logging those from this financial year as from the 1st of April, so that next year this committee will be able to have some data about that. What I can say is that I receive about 20, just over 20, I think it's 21-ish approaches, informal approaches per month, which will ask questions where I'm usually able to answer them or pass them back to a parish complaints process or similar. Chair, thank you for allowing me to speak to you on all of this, and back to yourself.
Okay, thank you. Just a point of clarification, that 20 per month, is that including parish councils, or is that just for the South and Vale councils?
No, that's for to be honest, that's mostly for the parish councillors. I would say the ratio is probably more significant than you see on the formal complaints appendix. And even there's very few districts. I should know this off the top of my head, I'm sorry. So there's 4 district and an 11 parish. I'd say that the ratio is even more, on my anecdotal experience, it's even more the case that they tend to relate to parish complaints.
Thank you. Right, I open that up to questions from the floor. You've studied everybody into.
It's overexciting, Chair. I have to accept it.
My comment's more, it's probably not for here, but we can discuss it on another time, is whether the code of conduct and the strength of it is good enough if someone does breach it, because sometimes I feel that the actual if someone has breached the code of conduct, the actual punishment, to use the right word, is, well, it's very lenient.
Yeah,
it's not worth it to go through all that process for go through all that time, officer time, complaint process, etc., then to find out there's actually not that can actually be done.
Yeah. I can't disagree, unfortunately, through you, Chair. Sorry. So the sanctions are set nationally. I made the point, really, so that you knew it's not in my or your control. Frustratingly, what I would say is so if you go back 10 years, you'll remember there was the Standards Board for England process, which was very good at dealing with very significant complaints, but was far too big and clunky to deal with the 99% of complaints, which are a much lower level. Then they got rid of that. Then came the current process, which, in my view, is excellent for dealing with the 99%, but not as strong enough to deal with the 1% really exceptional and difficult, nasty type cases that we would want to see stronger sanctions, which felt like punishments. In most cases, the sanctions and the guidance and some case law and the ombudsman case law that I've seen would suggest it's mostly about rebuilding relationships and making sure that mistakes don't happen again. That's what the sanctions are there for. So that's why training, apologies, and so on are there to enable a parish or a councillor or whatever to improve going forwards and to not repeat a cycle of problems, rather than, as you say, to punish them. And whilst there is talk of a change coming forwards, I don't think that's going to happen in the next 2 years. And I think what we've got is what we've got. And so the pragmatic efforts that I would put in are important. I'd also emphasise, sorry, this is a long answer, but it's a very important question, I think. I'd also emphasise that actually one of the greatest sanctions is actually peer pressure from other councillors. So if you have a councillor who has acted what they used to call beyond the pale, and the other councillors are very clear about that, and that little ecosystem of good governance is very clear about that, the councillors, in my experience, will typically realise they've gone too far and will often step away from their public role. I'm not saying that's the best outcome always, but it is another outcome which isn't a sanction, but does happen in the most extreme cases. So I have to work within the statutory environment I'm given, I'm afraid. But no, it's a very important question, Councillor.
I'm just going to say thank you for that answer, that comprehensively, Nick. The other thing that you said earlier was you're getting informal requests, 20 odd a month from parish councils and town clerks. So my question on that would be, are we giving the town clerks and the parish councils enough information, enough training, so they know what breaches the code of conduct, or what code of conduct is?
Yeah. So the parish is responsible for its own training for its own members. There is an organisation called OALC, and I don't ask me what it stands for. I'll never remember it. I hate acronyms. But they provide training and advice to parishes, including in areas about the code of conduct it's in the general sense. Although I also offer additional training now. In 2 weeks Friday, I'm coming up to Abingdon to OALC to present an all-day training for chairmen and parish clerks of parishes on the code of conduct and the role of the monitoring officer. So it's definitely something I'm trying to push. I'm very grateful to OALC who have engaged with me a lot on that. They are fantastic as an organisation, and whilst we've got slightly different roles, we fit together like a jigsaw in providing that training. I would, and support, I would say. So yeah, we're doing more, and we're going to keep building on that. I personally really enjoy doing training, so selfishly I'm keen to do it, but I think it's also really important and for us to improve improve those parishes who've had problems.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Are there any more questions? Thank you, Nick. Right, so we now need to move on to note next report formally. So that's to note the annual report on the Council's Code of Conduct for the 2024-25 fiscal year. Can I have a proposer?
I will propose that we note it and take that recommendation.
Second by Councillor. Okay, can we go to vote for, please? Unanimous, thank you. Record that. Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. I'll excuse myself if that's all right with you, but or I can stay if you prefer.
No, it's fine. I don't think we want to discuss the appendix in the confidential session, so I think that's fine. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, now we need to move to item 11, which is the work programme. Since we've all had a chance to review that, is there anything anybody would like to discuss about it? Any comments from the officers?
I think the only question I sort of ask every time is there any of these reports that are scheduled in that may not come when they should be or when we're expecting?
As far as we're aware, it's all according to schedule. Lucy does have a comment to make about December.
Okay.
Yes, so at the previous meeting, it was discussed scheduling in an additional meeting at the beginning of December for the draft statement of accounts. And the suggestion is Tuesday, the 9th of December, if members are happy with that date. Put that meeting in.
Can I just clarify as well?
Yes.
I mean, obviously that's on the assumption that the audit progresses as laid out. The actual statutory deadline for signing off 24-25 accounts is the end of February 26. So I think definitely pencil it in the 9th of December suggested, but note it could change.
So it's a provisional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's agreed then. The 9th of December will be allocated for a meeting with Joe, subject to progress against the audit.
And the intention would be, ideally, we would just do the statement of accounts and all the associated things like the annual government statement, letter of representation, would be something that may event about it.
Thank you. Okay, now to discuss the remaining items on the agenda, we need to move into confidential sessions. So, and I just check that we're all agreed that we can move into.
Should we just note the work schedule?
Oh, sorry, don't think I have to.
Yeah, so we just know that we agreed it.
Yeah, so just show of hands, we note the work schedule then.
I'll propose it. Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, so the next item will move as confidential. Is any objections for us moving into confidential? Can you stop the blank pen?
It's recording Lucy and I.